this session is new for us. And what we really wanted to accomplish with this session is to give you guys feedback on real life case studies and challenges that you're facing in your businesses. So everyone who registered for GrowCommerce was asked to submit a case study. We had 4 that were ultimately chosen. The design of this session is really not to just benefit the 4 case studies and the companies that are being represented, but to really give you a sense of how marketers look at these challenges and solve these challenges. So with that, I'm going to introduce Casey McSary. She's going to be the moderator. She'll introduce the panelists and the cases and take it from here.
All right. So first of all, I'm hoping they're here. Is Lauren Ball here? Gary Kazmar or Philip Alexev? If you're here, can you come up so you can be a part of the conversation? Oh, they're right there. Hi. Nice to meet you, Gary, and hopefully Lauren will come up. Okay, so Veronica did a great job introducing, getting more out of your marketing spend. Really excited to be here with this panel of amazing people. One of the things that I was very excited about was making this an interactive session. So, you can ask your questions and we can hopefully give you some real-time feedback. We had over 10 people asked to be a part of this and have their case study discussed. So if we didn't get to you or you didn't get picked, feel free to come up and talk to us at lunch, and we know we're the only thing that stands between you and lunch. So we will make this fun. So Casey McSary, currently self-employed consultant. Spent my time before that most recently at Lacoste, running all of their digital marketing and their e-commerce, redesigned their website, all of their operations, front end, back end. Before that was at XO Group for over 5 years, running their e-commerce and overseeing their digital marketing as well. So I will let the panel take it from here and introduce themselves.
Sure. So Matt Kreitzer, formerly of Tommy John, and I've been in e-commerce for 15, 16, 17, I don't know how many years. Kind of lost count, but doing some consulting work now for a venture-backed holding company called Resonance. And that's what I'm up to currently.
I'm Emily Hickey, and I've been building tech startups for most of my career. Most recently, something called Volley Doodle, which was a social commerce kind of pioneer. And now building my own company and doing growth consulting for mostly retail companies looking to drive growth into their direct-to-consumer channels.
My name is Brian Suh. I'm the head of analytics and solution architecture at Visual IQ. For those of you that aren't familiar with Visual IQ, it's the leading global attribution solution. We work with clients like AT&T, Citigroup, JPMC, you name it. So excited to be here.
Okay, so our first case study, and I don't think Lauren is here, but Lauren Ball, she submitted this question. She's the Director of Acquisition Marketing, and I did have some email exchanges, so hopefully we can get to the crux of it. So her question was, incentive affiliate traffic is one of the largest volume drivers in our portfolio, but we know we cannot be as reliant on it. We're looking for new high volume sources to test and spend with. So her biggest challenge was looking for ways to diversify her marketing mix. And they're currently relying mainly on partners to do their marketing for them. So they haven't had that much success with mailing on their own. They're leveraging all their partners to help them with their marketing. So basically, if you don't know SANDVIK, it's a low buy-in sort of book club-esque model where you buy in, let's say $9.99, and then you have a $20 a month subscription model. The other additional hurdles that they had were figuring out how to diversify amongst their brands. They have 4 main brands and a similar message throughout all of them. So I guess you want to start, Matt?
Sure. I think looking at this particular case study and hearing the client say that, they're really relying heavily on affiliate traffic, the first thing that I would want to do there is really understand how much of that affiliate traffic they think is incremental right? Because a lot of, when you've been in the space for a while and, you're going to put your affiliate network's pixel on your page, they're going to take credit for a lot of sales that might not necessarily be incremental, right? And I think, one way to do that is kind of dig in and kind of look at the affiliates that they're actually using to drive sales. And if it's a lot of deal sites, then, you're probably dealing with very little incrementality in terms of the affiliate channel. And, in terms of broadening, I think, reach in terms of marketing channels that you would play in, I mean, if I look back at kind of the work that we did at Tommy John, we did a lot in Facebook and other online tactics, but we also did a lot in the offline space. And I think this kind of plays into a little bit of the conversation that we'll have around attribution too. But when you're dealing with kind of smaller type companies, and we did this at TJ too, is I think it's very easy to get caught into kind of this last click mentality, and obviously you want to be looking at first touches, I think, when you're really trying to scale something, and I'm not sure how big their business is. But one of the things that we do on Facebook, for instance, would be to create audiences where we're suppressing the current customer file and creating true prospecting audiences. And they've built this incredible tool that if you have a really good idea of a kind of a niche audience that you want to go after, which you think is right in your target, you can do that on Facebook. And you can also retarget to the people that are interacting with those ads on Facebook. So you're getting a very kind of first touch view. And of course, there are other things that are going on outside of Facebook, other retargeting efforts that you might have. But we found that to be really successful when you are looking at an audience that you think is going to be highly engaged with the product that you're trying to sell. And the other thing I would say is that there's two real tactics that I've always kind of carried in my toolkit, and they are: one, ask people how they heard about you, and number two is actually survey your customers extensively. But in regards to number one, I've found the best way to do that is really to ask it at the time of purchase. And if you have control over your shopping cart and can add questions, if you're putting a question in there with 15 to 20 different answers, right? And this is really important when you're dealing with things like influencers and radio and TV, a lot of stuff that's really hard to attribute even, in Google Analytics. You can ask people and you can make those choices basically randomized. And so it's all statistically valid, but you would be surprised the number of people that would actually answer that question, and we've tested it, and there was really no degradation to conversion at checkout. But that has always been a huge driver to figure out, okay, well, how much real traffic and traction are we getting from people talking about our brand, influencers, especially PR in the fashion space where I am now. So that's one thing. And then two is surveying customers, because you really want to find that audience, that really narrow audience that you initially want to go out and maybe create some ads around in Facebook. And then you can expand your audience from there. But if you're finding that, hey, my core audience is a mother that's 35 to 40 and has 2 children and lives in these areas and is interested in these kind of programs, whatever it might be, you can start off with some audiences in Facebook that might be 50 to 100,000 people, and really be able to drive some performance from that, and then exhaust those and try to expand from there.
Lauren joined us, so I don't know if hi Lauren. I don't know if we've hit on your topic or if there's anything you wanted to add in terms of your question for the panel. Okay, Emily?
Yeah, I would say in terms of how I would go about growing the business, like it's a kids books, right? Subscription. So when I think of subscription, I think of like HubSpot. I feel like they really invented the model of how subscriptions are marketed, which I've personally copied with a company in the past, and it worked unbelievably well. I'm a big fan of copying things. But so it's essentially like inbound marketing, like using content and seeding it over the web to drive inbound interest, and then building up just a huge email competency. Like if you're using a lot of affiliate, it says maybe, like you don't have like real strengths internally. I mean, that's just a guess, but one strength I would really build internally would be email, because you essentially find the conversation that you can own and wrap your product within. It's hard to just cold sell a subscription. It's got to be more infomercially, Crazy Eddie selling the blender, all the benefits selling around like why psychologically that subscription might be of interest if it's, brain development with kids or your early childhood development. And then, bring them in on that basis and sell them on that. And we've had a ton of success in some of my consulting work selling subscriptions through e-guide downloads on Facebook or videos that bring them to a landing page. So I really would encourage you to embrace content. And then when you think about how to seed content across the web, I think for one thing, if you can get lucky enough to find a partner that has a 1 million+ email list and doesn't know what to say to all those people, that's how we really grew this company kind of overnight, was we found a partner who needed content. Give them awesome content, send it out, they come to a landing page, enter their email address, then you get their email address and you can offer market them. Or Facebook. So that's how you drive people in. You try to get your capture rate of your email pop up to 70% or something using like an e-guide download or something. It's got to be really turbo. You got to be capturing as many of those emails as you can and then get really good at email marketing. And that's how I think you build a subscription business.
All right. Thank you. Did you want to comment also on that one? Okay.
I know I'll try to go quick. So I think part of the other piece of this that I noticed is you mentioned it's a low introductory rate and you weren't getting a whole bunch of continuations on the subscription. The other thing you can do is try to diversify your incentives with your affiliates. So right now they're probably just being paid on that first conversion, and that's a loss leader for you, right? You're using that to introduce them into the brand, but they're not converting. So you're actually paying the affiliate for loss leaders, not for profitable long-term value. So consider diversifying that, having different incentives for the affiliates to have people, to pay them more for people that are going to do this subscription based on the amount of LTV you're going to get from each of those things. And the other thing that you're probably going to hear me say a lot through this entire panel is the Wanamaker quote, is where I don't know which half of my advertising is working, but it seems like affiliate is the only one, so there's something in there. I've worked with a lot of other advertisers, and affiliate is, and when you talk about attribution, everyone thinks that affiliate is going to be completely taken off the plan. But there's value in affiliate, it's just probably not as much as you thought. So maybe take 10% off of the budget, reduce their comps, reduce their CPAs by 10% and say, look, my business just can't support this. Use that to fund the email group. Use that to fund additional Facebook retargeting, because when you go up to your management or teams that you're looking for budget, you're not necessarily asking for incremental. Now you're shifting things around. It's going to be a lot easier for you to sell that in.
All right. So we're going to move right ahead because we have 4 case studies today. And I'm going to let Philip do my job for me and introduce his company and his question.
Okay, so, Philip Alexeyev, SKETCHFAB. Basically, the company is the world's largest repository of 3D and virtual reality content. And basically the question is kind of, our growth at the moment is limited on one side, content creation, so people who know how to 3D model, and on the other side is basically consuming the content. So like limited hardware, limited accessibility to, how to consume 3D content. So, what's next? Are we at the mercy of, the industry, or is there something that we can do to like growth hack our growth?
Okay, so I think part of Philip's question, if I'm understanding correctly, is where to focus. So are you focusing on the people in terms of who are doing the creation? Are you focusing on the partnerships with the people who are enabling your player on their sites, correct?
Well, so basically, on one hand we focus on partnerships, and on the other hand it's customer or acquisition of creators.
And then how do you bring them to your site?
Precisely.
And how do you keep them there?
Right.
Is that through content, thought leadership, etc.? So Emily, do you want to start with this one?
Sure, that's a tough one. That's actually one of my favorite kind of growth challenges. Like you're an early player in an undeveloped space and you have to kind of create the market, which most people don't have to do. Everyone knows what a shirt is, But we had this challenge at Hot Jobs, which I was an early employee of, and we had to explain to people what a job board was. It was sort of like a newspaper classified, but you could do it online. But and MakerBot did this recently. That was a New York company that obviously recently went through having to create a market for themselves. But I think the way you do it, your first phase of acquisition is really different than your subsequent phases. It's really manual. It's sort of this manual extroverted process of evangelism and manually recruiting people to what you're doing.
Doing things that don't scale.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, which is, you've been through Techstars, you know that. But but what you do basically is go out and manually handpick, these users, and I would try to migrate people from DeviantArt and all those other marketplaces that you guys are probably already working with. But I would go find maybe not the top creators, but big contributors and handpick them and hand educate them on how to do this. Give them status on your marketplace, like the way that Stack Overflow does, or there are a lot of paved roads in terms of how to help people become sort of recognized architects of the movement within your marketplace. And so I would recruit people in. I would let, for now, the creator population be the consumers. I wouldn't worry too much about the consumer side. I think they'll admire each other's work enough. Then I would work with them to create mainstream concepts like viral 3D, campaign, Trump, doing something weird as a viral 3D thing, and partner with BuzzFeed and do a 3D satire thing of the week. You know what I mean? Like how when Bree was building MakerBot, he had that big Stephen Colbert breakthrough. That was a really pivotal moment for him. So if you can somehow take this esoteric stuff that people are doing on that marketplace and join it into the news cycle and the pop culture cycle, I think that's how you can help mainstream the concepts out of the fringe, but you're starting in the fringe. And then I'd be just slogging away at trade shows and at colleges and universities and educational stuff and PR and just doing the manual, sweat work of creating the concept. So that's what I'd be doing.
All right, so the third one is our mystery company. So they actually asked us to be anonymous, and because of that, it might be a little bit shorter. We're running a little tight on time, but what I can tell you is their target audience was 25 to 45 male, and they're doing well over 120 million. So the question is how to measure multiple upper funnel channels at once. But really, when I talked to them, they felt that they were doing direct response very well, that their channels were extremely well optimized, that they were using a custom attribution model layered on top of their data warehouse. And next step for them was that they have a small chunk of funds that they're looking to test in Q3 in TV, video, and out of home. They have no idea how to measure that. Their plan is to take a localized approach and test TV, then TV and video home, like an AAB, ABC, and try to figure out what's incremental. Brian, dear, this sounds like the perfect question for you, and I did not make it up. I promise. This is a real one. So can you take this for me?
Of course. So one of the interesting things about this that the slide itself doesn't really say is that TV, it's a lot of offline piece. So it's not necessarily tied directly to the digital tracking that they're already doing. So a great first step is what they are doing, was trying to do the ABC testing. But as you start doing that, you start realizing that it's really not practical or scalable, because you're having to always, you can either measure the market, let's just say it's successful, then you want to run it everywhere. And so you have to choose between being able to measure it versus actually running something that's successful. So it's a great place to start, a great place to build a case study and use case to sell it internally for more funding to do something like that. But then you have to really pivot into sort of different, more statistically sound-based approaches that are, I guess, more along the lines of mixed media modeling. We call it top-down. I'm sure most of you guys are probably familiar with that. Rather than looking directly at the users and their touch points and what they're being exposed to, looking at trends and how that's impacting it. And it covers a lot of great information. What we've seen a lot when we do these market-based testing is there's nuances in each of the markets. So let's just say we had one where they had one market was on the East Coast and one market was on the West Coast. We got hit by a huge storm. Businesses shut down. It spiked up e-commerce sales because people were not going outside. They could buy online more. There's natural disasters. There's other things like Mardi Gras or things like that impact all of that. So you need to move to a more statistically based approach as opposed to direct measuring a lot of that stuff.
Okay, great. Do you have anything else, or do you want me to move on to number 4?
I think it kind of gets back to, when you're at such a large scale, right, you're a $100 million business, the incrementality of things, like it's harder to feel things, right? Like when you're a smaller company, let's say, and you go out and you do a big radio engagement with a personality or something, you're going to feel that. And there's all kinds of different touch points that you're going to feel that at. You're going to feel that when you're looking at real-time Google Analytics, when a radio spot goes off, you're going to feel that on conversions. And, if you're asking users how they heard about you, and if you're combining that with promo code use, interestingly, one of the strange things that I've kind of observed is that promo code leakage, when it happens, it only happens on things, for the most part, that are driven by online activities, right? So you put a promo code in a Facebook ad, you put it in a banner, it's on Retail Me Not in 2 minutes. And, then you've got leakage. You do it in a radio script, you do it on TV, it doesn't seem to leak as much, so you can use that kind of data a little more effectively to kind of like pinpoint, what I think my CPA is for this particular channel. And the way that I always kind of looked at it is, yes, you're going to look at your best guess CPA for a particular channel, but then you're also going to kind of look at, all right, well, here's how many new customers I got over this month, and here's how much I spent on marketing, so my overall kind of CPA is this, and then kind of using the individual CPAs to kind of pinpoint performance and where you can kind of get some improvement. So it's possible. I think radio probably have a lot of real success there. Out of home and TV, found TV to be great, obviously for brand awareness. A little bit harder to drive response with if you're really worried about brand. That's another part of the equation. Do you want it to look like an infomercial? Do you want it to look like a brand piece?
They want it to be a brand piece. That's their...
Yeah. So that can be a little challenging there, but yeah, that's what I would add.
I think, Matt, you actually bring up a good point, and it sort of was reflective in the prior, and we talked about this before, was there's really a big split between, depending on the stage of your company and the size of your company, the sort of advice that you might get for a $100 million company would be probably terrible for a small company, and vice versa, right? We were talked about the sweat work we were doing with SKETCHFAB. I mean, those things would be unfathomable for like a $100 million company. So I think it's really about understanding your company where you're at and trying to play to those strengths. I think generally the larger you go, the more time you're spending justifying to your CFO that you should be spending this money, and it's more about probably point testing to try to get that case point. I think it's harder to measure for the exact reason that you were talking about, because you have so much other stuff in market already. Whereas if you're a smaller company, it's more about that sweat equity that you're putting in that Emily mentioned, and how to drive that, and it's easier to measure because there's not as much of a footprint. So balancing those two and kind of keeping that into account as you make those plans is really important.
Okay, so our final is Crayola, a brand that we all know well and love. And we have Gary here who can tell us about his question. And I think we all know Crayola, but anything else you want to add?
Sure. We heard from our tree-hugging Amazon panelist earlier. And if you've got a $100 product and you're selling it and paying Amazon 15%, you still have $35 of margin to play with for all your operational costs. If you're doing this with a product that only costs $10, that's $3.50 to play with. And Crayola has 80% of their products underneath $10. So how and where does a company, a manufacturer like Crayola, get into the online space profitably, and where?
Okay, so both a B2B and a B2C business. Specifically, sort of we're talking about the B2B here, where the price point is a little less, or both?
We are B2B, B2C. We sell Amazon Direct. We also sell the Marketplace, eBay, and Crayola.com.
So one of the things that I know was emailed back and forth was that your list size, so you have a pretty robust and big list size. So maybe some of the things that he could be doing with his list in terms of loyalty or otherwise that he's not doing. And then I know one of the things that was emailed about was sort of where you're going with your website. So, there was some talk about how much content you have and how people are coming to your site for crafts and activities, and that you're working really hard to try to integrate the buy interaction between the customer and the activity itself. So just to sort of add some more color to the audience, where would you guys start with such a great brand?
Want to kick it off? Or?
Sure. I have a 3-year-old and a 7-year-old, so I buy a lot of markers, and I would consider this a replenishment product, which I'm sure you guys think of it that way. But, my kids leave the caps off constantly. It's maddening.
They break the crayons. I have a 6-year-old. I almost think she breaks the crayons on purpose to get a new box.
I just want new ones. But no, I mean, quickly, I would say if you're dealing with a low price point, it has to be recurring. It's the only way you can make it up. And then your search and content-driven stuff that's not so kind of CPA-driven. And what I would do is I think I would build in a replenishment option, a feature at checkout, 1 month, 3 months, 6 months for when that should be replenished. I think I would personally use that. And then I would consider maybe even a subscription product, we talked about a box, it might have been Matt's idea, I can't remember, but a Crayola box that you could actually sell. And then I would use your SEO. I think that's your key asset because you have such domain authority. Most people don't get that.
He mentioned, I think, that he was having some issues, right, with PPC, except for the brand. You were doing... Non-brand terms? Yeah, like...
You said brand terms were
brand
really
terms were good, right?
But I mean organic SEO. Yeah.
We're only getting people on major brand terms.
Okay.
On the major brand terms. Okay. So if someone searches Disney coloring pages, you guys aren't showing up? So I would try to show up there, I would, that's what I'm always searching on with my kids is for coloring pages and stuff like that. And if you captured my email the second I got to your site, with maybe an incentive around a download of a coloring book or something, I would, and then sent me an email every week with coloring pages around the Olympics, and again, tying to the news cycle with your content, and then upselling your subscription product or the markers. That, to me, your brand, your domain authority is a huge asset. I would be attacking SEO, and then amping up your email capture, because if I remember, that was a little bit low, but that percentage really can be as high as 70%. It just matters what you're incentivizing. So once you build up that file, then your core competency is email marketing, and you're trying to drive recurring. Otherwise,
and also change the way you're looking at the conversion, right? Because the conversion rate, you want them to come and look for those coloring and those articles and all of that.
Conversion
when I think about my stepdaughter, every time I'm online, she's asking for Disney princesses, and how many times am I Googling for Disney princess pictures to print out? And it'd be great if it was driving me back.
Right. Yeah.
Crayola.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely possible. And there was a big acquisition in the space this week for a company that doesn't even sell their own product. It's Dollar Shave Club. So you guys have a lot of margin to work with. I think one of the, I was thinking about it because I've been in omni-channel environments before, especially where either it's your brand stores or your third-party partners that are taking the lion's share of revenue. When you're spending $1 online, just due to the nature of how people search and transact online, there's a lot of leakage in terms of where that dollar goes. So you might spend $1 on Facebook advertising, and then the person goes to Walmart and buys your product, and you're never able to complete that loop. So that's definitely one challenge that you're up against, and obviously those are huge partners for you, so you're really not going to be able to do anything about those people bidding on your brand terms. That's kind of just nature of the game there. I would think, when I think about, I totally agree with Emily on the subscription-based aspect of the business, but I would perhaps encourage you to think a little bit bigger than maybe just the crayon, right? So if you're thinking about selling the same stuff that you're selling in Walmart and Target, it's going to be really difficult, right? But if you can sell something different, and something different might be, this crayon, if you think about a crafts project, a crayon is only one piece of a crafts project, and you guys own that one piece. But I can almost see maybe a scenario where you're selling almost kind of like craft recipes, and you're giving them the individual ingredients to create this project. So you guys could literally be like the Blue Apron of crafts projects, right? Where every month you're getting something new. And the crayons are part of it. Maybe it's a custom color crayon that you can't get anywhere else. Something differentiated there.
Maybe like a birthday party kit for kids with all the activities, sort of like your candy bar. That's kind
totally.
Of an
So
idea.
I think you got to think about an offering that is differentiated and something that is reoccurring for sure.
So they've talked a lot about sort of growing the price point and growing the package, which obviously you should do. It's not, I'm not to take away from that at all. I think you have to combine that with lowering your costs, right? So again, that Wanamaker quote, I don't know which half of my advertising is working. Just imagine if you knew and you cut your costs in half, your conversions would stay the same. You double your profitability, or your CPA would be cut in half. I think it's important that you start looking at what are the places that are not just driving volume, but driving cost-efficient volume and optimizing against that. When we work with clients, people don't realize how all of their channels are all intersecting with each other. They all know that, but they don't realize the degree of that happening and how much waste is happening. I can say that we've seen on almost every client, we see impression volumes for one person be in the hundreds of thousands. That's like ridiculous amount of money that's being wasted there. Not because display is bad, or even on the affiliate case, not because affiliate is not going to drive you any traffic. It's just you have to make sure you're optimizing it accordingly to how that's being bought. I don't think that it's not just spend more and you're going to get the same return. You know, there's that diminishing return that you're going to have on each channel, each tactic that you do. You have to sort of look at all those together to see where can you start shaving some costs to reinvest into something else that maybe is corporately, maybe more product development, or even just within your own marketing or e-commerce department to create packages or fund discounts that you're going to be able to absorb within the margin that you wouldn't be able to do within an Amazon or within a brick and mortar retailer. So you have to, it's a lot of work to have to do all that stuff, but that's how you're going to get, you want to get every single penny that you can in every single way. There's no one size fits all against all those strategies, so it's about chopping all that up and looking at each individual piece.
All right. Well, we are out of time. One of the things that we're really excited about, so thank you to Crayola and thank you to Gary, is he brought with him over, was it 500? Sample packs of crayons that are up there for you and your kids. And so I'm here to say that you all get a crayon. So he also is generous enough, if crayons aren't for you and markers are for your kids, there's a code right there, GrowCommerce 2016 will be live for the next few days, 25% off. And I'm gonna hand it to Veronica. Thank you, panelists, and she will send you off before lunch.
Yes, I mean.